Waves are formed primarily by the wind blowing across the water's surface. When the peaks of the water move faster than the lower portion, the top portion breaks off and rolls down the front of the wave, and white caps appear. Wave definitions. Height: the vertical distance between the trough and the crest. Trough: the lowest point reached by the wave. Crest: the highest point reached by the wave. Length: the horizontal distance between crest and crest, or between trough and trough. Wave series: describes the series or groups in which waves approach the beach. There is a relatively calm period between wave series or sets. Interval: the time it takes for each wave crest to pass a given point. If the interval is short, divers will have little time to rest between waves. Surge: the back and forth motion of waves as they approach the beach. If you use surge to your advantage, you can move without effort across the ocean floor. Allow the surge to carry you in the direction you want to go and maintain your position when the surge is moving in the opposite direction. Experienced divers who use this technique can move considerable distances in heavy surge without expending much energy. Surf: as the bottom section of the wave feels the bottom, it begins to move more slowly than the surface portion, causing the surface portion to build up and break over. In surf, the top part of the wave shears off and moves a wall of water forward. A deep canyon near the shore causes the wave height to drop and results in light surf. A reef just offshore causes the surf to build in height. Currents: before shore diving at an unfamiliar site, study the water movements and check with lifeguards or a local dive center in the area. Rip currents are best observed from a distance above the beach. To identify rip currents from beach level, look for breaks in the surf line caused by outrushing surface water. Rip currents always move away from the beach on a line almost perpendicular to the beach. Rip currents move much faster than a diver or an experienced swimmer can swim. Never attempt to outswim the current. Rip currents only move a few hundred meters from the beach. So, to get out of a rip current, swim parallel to the beach for a few meters. Then use the force of incoming waves to return to the beach. Learning how to use currents to your advantage can provide you with many great diving experiences. To be prepared for all your diving adventures, SSI recommends both the boat diving and waves, tides, and currents specialties. A dive buddy helps in all phases of diving and shares the fun. A buddy assists in dive planning, suiting up, pre-dive equipment and safety check, water entry support, assistance throughout the dive, post-dive equipment maintenance, and logging dive information. Diving with a buddy is the only safe way to dive. You should never dive alone. A buddy provides a second total diving system, psychological well-being, and the comfort of someone to assist you underwater. An effective buddy requires practice, communication, and planning. To have a safe and enjoyable dive with another person, you must agree beforehand on the purpose of the dive and how the dive is to be carried out. If one diver wants to do macro photography and the other wants to spear fish, it will be difficult to keep the buddy team together. The buddy team must agree on hand signals, descent technique, maximum depth of the dive, maximum bottom time, minimum cylinder pressure. You should always be back on the surface with at least 30 bar in your cylinder. Compass headings, maximum distance between divers throughout the dive, ascent technique. Lost buddy procedure. If you lose your buddy underwater, turn a complete 360 degrees looking up and down and horizontally. Spend no longer than 1 minute at depth looking for your buddy before performing a normal ascent. Establish positive buoyancy once on the surface and look for your buddy. Be familiar with your buddy's diving equipment, particularly the placement of his alternate air source, BCD, inflation device, and weight release device. Your dive buddy might be your spouse or a friend or someone who is assigned to you as a buddy by a dive master on a boat. You always have the right to decline diving with someone with whom you do not feel comfortable. Trust your instincts, regardless of who that intended buddy might be. Remember, your safety and comfort in the open water is the most important factor of any dive. Adding additional equipment to the total diving system and being in the best physical and mental condition possible cannot entirely compensate for the increased risk associated with diving alone. The best way to dive is with a buddy. There are many reasons for planning and executing your dives, but the most essential one is to prevent accidents. The best way to prevent accidents and enjoy every dive is with a dive computer. Dive computers are built for today's divers and take into account the way you really dive. A multi-level dive profile automatically tracks bottom time, monitors ascent rates, tracks surface intervals, and logs the number of dives you make in a day and even in a week. Dive computers are fun, easy, and convenient to use. Though diving with a dive computer is the method of choice for most divers today, it is important that you understand the effects single or multiple dives have on your body. This will enable you to plan a dive or a series of dives safely. Before we begin to plan dives, we must all speak the same language or use the same terminology. Here are some of the key terms you must know in order to help you understand how to use a dive computer. Depth, total dive time, bottom time, residual nitrogen, surface interval, repetitive dive, no decompression limits, no decompression dive. Dive computers are essential for planning and executing your dives. They record all the pertinent information and help you stay within your no decompression limits. However, there are a few guidelines you should follow. Always have your own dive computer. Do not share a dive computer with your buddy. Check the dive computer's battery life before diving. Adhere to the limits of the dive computer. Make sure all safety warnings are observed. Follow the ascent display or audible warning to stay within the proper ascent rate for the dive computer. Remain within your limits and be conservative. Plan and execute your dive carefully and have a contingency plan if your dive computer fails. When diving from a boat or with any organized group, your dive professional will most likely give a pre-dive briefing. The briefing may include specifics, such as your dive parameters, how long you can stay down, what direction to swim, 35 bar rule, etc. When boat diving, plan your dive and your equipment assembly, donning and adjustment so that you are ready to enter the water when the boat reaches the dive site. On chartered trips, most decisions may be made for you. But it is certainly smart to check with the captain or dive master to determine when to get dressed and put on your equipment. If you are susceptible to seasickness, ask a diving physician for medication and also inform your group leader so that you can enter the water as soon as possible when you reach your destination. By confirming your plan, assembling your equipment, and preparing to dress before arriving at your dive site, you can minimize the time spent on deck once the boat is anchored. For the most part, boat captains will exercise caution in locating an area with relatively calm water. Nevertheless, there are different water conditions in different regions. And those conditions, plus the personal preferences of boat captains, will dictate what entry and exit techniques you use. Pay attention to these during your pre-dive briefing. Make sure your entry area is clear of divers or any other obstacles prior to entering the water, regardless of the entry technique. Your SSI dive professional will show you proper water entry techniques during your pool sessions. After you have entered the water, perform a proper buoyancy check and then descend together with your buddy until you reach your planned dive depth. Stay together during the descent and equalize frequently to avoid problems. Navigation can be done by two methods: compass and natural. Underwater is no different. You must be able to either follow a planned set of directions underwater or use the natural resources to navigate underwater. For example, coral heads. Either way, the goal is to avoid long surface swims and make it back to your entry point. We introduced you to the underwater compass in Section 2 as part of your information system. Here is how your compass works. The north-seeking needle is a magnetic needle that points to magnetic north. The north-seeking needle is your constant reference line. All basic underwater navigation is performed in terms of magnetic north. The lubber line, or sight window, is the direction you swim. This is used to align the diver's body with the direction of travel. With a sight window, simply align rotating bezel with the witness marks of travel in the window. This will give you your return direction back to the boat or shore. Understanding simple out and back navigation doesn't qualify you as being certified in navigation. It's mainly a general understanding of the basic principles. If you want to learn more and become proficient in navigation, ask your SSI dive professional about the SSI navigation specialty. Ascents should be planned. This means you and your buddy have spent 1/3 of your air supply away from the boat, 1/3 back to the boat, plus your safety stop, and you are both back on the boat with 35 bar or 500 psi. And to do that, you both need to check your information systems often. Once it's time to make your ascent to your safety stop, remember your cylinder has less air and you have been swimming neutrally buoyant. Don't forget, when pressure decreases, volume increases. Hold your BC exhaust hose in your left hand and check your information system, dive computer, for a nice and slow and controlled ascent. Look up during your ascent for the boat, anchor line, downline, or buoy, and stay with your buddy. The greatest relative pressure change takes place from 0 to 10 meters or 33 feet. The slower the ascent rate from the depth to your safety stop, the better. On the surface, inflate your BC for surface flotation. SSI recommends a safety stop for every dive at 5 meters or 15 feet for 3 to 5 minutes. Keep your equipment on until you are safely on deck. The only exceptions to this include removing fins to climb a ladder, removing your weight belt to make you more positively buoyant, and removing equipment and handing it up if instructed to do so by your boat captain. Always choose the safest and easiest entry and exit procedures appropriate to the diving conditions. Take these precautions in case you accidentally slip back into the water. Keep your mask in place so you can see, your regulator or snorkel in place so you can breathe, and your BC inflated so you can float. After you have completed your dive, rinsed your equipment, and stored it away for the next dive, it's time to fill out your dive log. SSI believes it's essential to keep an accurate record of your personal information and dives. Sure, your dive computer will do that too, but the dive computer can only track certain things. What makes a dive enjoyable or not is knowing you had the right thermal protection to wear and the right amount of weight needed for a diversity of dives. Because the next time you go diving, you may not remember how much weight you wore with what exposure suit, unless you write it down. Diving is an endless sport of discovery, new dives, and this dive log will become a permanent record of all the wonderful memories you will have in diving. And that is priceless. Your SSI dive professional will go over the total dive log with you and how to fill out and use each page. This will also become a permanent record of your open water certification dives and any other courses you decide to take. Dive operators and resorts will ask you for your total dive log to show proof of the type of diving and experience you have for certain types of diving. Again, a lot more information has been presented in this section about environmental conditions, buddy teamwork, dive planning, and execution. So much instruction may seem overwhelming, but by mastering this information, you will quickly become a comfortable and confident diver, ready to safely enjoy many years of wonderful underwater adventures.